There's a reason why some men rise from absolute zero and build wealth, influence and respect, while others spend decades working hard without ever truly achieving anything. And the truth is, almost no one dares to talk about it directly. Because the modern world sells motivation, pretty phrases, and superficial positivism, but the men who truly build empires learn much deeper, quieter, and more uncomfortable skills. Machiavelli understood this centuries ago. Power has never been just about money. It has always been about understanding human nature, about controlling impulses while most are controlled by emotions, about seeing the real game while others live distracted, trying to appear virtuous all the time. And perhaps this is the most dangerous part of all. Many honest men remain poor, not for lack of intelligence, but because they were taught to believe in rules that the real world never respected. While most seek approval, strategic men build positioning. While crowds strive to appear important, they strengthen character, discipline, and understanding of people. Because sooner or later, life reveals a brutal truth. The market doesn't reward good intentions. It rewards perceived value, self-control, and inner alignment. The emotionally weak individual may even make money quickly, but usually loses everything when fortune changes direction. Men who develop psychological structure learn to transform chaos into a competitive advantage, and that's exactly where the so-called dark skills begin. Not dark because they are evil, but because almost no one has the maturity to face them without fantasy or naivete. Some of these skills will destroy beliefs you've carried your whole life. Others will make you realize why certain men always seem to be a few steps ahead of the rest. And the most curious thing? Many of these principles don't require extraordinary talent, a wealthy background, or powerful connections. They require the courage to abandon comfortable illusions, because in the end, ordinary men don't remain ordinary for lack of opportunity. They remain ordinary because they never learned to master themselves before trying to master money, business, or influence. And after understanding these 7 skills, it will be impossible to see success, power, and wealth in the same way again. If something inside you awakened while listening, don't ignore that feeling. This channel isn't about videos, it's about memories. Remember who you were before the fear, before the exhaustion, before the silence. Each new video here is a different reflection of your own soul, an invitation to understand what the world never taught you. The power you seek outside has always been within you. If you feel that this journey speaks to what lives silently within you, sign up now. Not to follow yet another creator, but to reconnect with something the world tried to make you forget. Because here, every word was made to heal, each reflection to awaken, and each video serves as a reminder. You are not alone on the path back to yourself. Click on subscribe and turn the algorithm into a daily reminder of who you really are. There's a silent pattern that separates ordinary men from men who build a legacy, and almost no one notices it at the beginning of the journey. Most spend years trying to appear strong, intelligent, influential, or sophisticated, when in reality, the game has always been about substance. Machiavelli understood something few dare to admit. Appearance opens doors, but only character sustains empires. A man can learn to speak beautifully, wear expensive watches, drive absurd cars, and post strategic phrases on social media, but if he can't uphold his word when no one is watching, everything begins to rot from the inside out. And that's where the modern danger lies. People are addicted to building emotional showcases while neglecting their inner structure. But life demands consistency. It always does. Sooner or later, the mask weighs heavily. The individual begins to live to maintain an image, not to evolve as a man. And ironically, the more he tries to impress others, the further he gets from his own essence. Politics, guided by reality, not by ideals, demands facing an uncomfortable truth. Reputation without character only buys time, nothing more. The businessman who manipulates customers can get rich quick. The influencer who feigns wisdom can go viral. The leader who performs virtue can win followers. But without a real foundation, everything becomes wet sand trying to hold up concrete. The truly dangerous man is not the one who shouts about power, but the one who builds consistency in silence while others are distracted trying to appear important. There is a brutal difference between recognition and respect. Recognition can be bought with marketing. Respect is born from the repetition of aligned actions. A simple example of this appears in everyday life. Think of a father who promises his son something small, like going out to eat on a Friday, and cancels for the third time because something more important came up. Little by little, without realizing it, he teaches him that his word has no weight. Now imagine the opposite. A simple man without status, without luxury, but who honors what he says. The human brain perceives this immediately, because trust is not born from discourse. It is born from moral predictability. Better to be feared than loved may work in wars, business, and tough negotiations, but even fear requires internal structure. Without character, even authority becomes cheap theater, and this applies to everything: relationships, money, leadership, career. The end justifies the means seems seductive when someone is desperate to win quickly, but there's a detail that almost no one mentions. The means shape who you become as you climb. And many men make money while destroying their own identity in the process. Then they don't understand why they live empty lives, even when surrounded by achievements. One of the greatest signs of male maturity appears when a man stops asking, "How can I appear more successful?" and starts asking, "Who do I need to become to sustain success without destroying myself?" This changes absolutely everything. Because at that moment, he understands that character is not religious discourse, nor a pretty phrase from an old book. Character is a long-term strategy. It is psychological survival. It is what prevents a man from crumbling when fortune changes direction. Virtue and fortune go hand in hand, but fortune respects men who are internally prepared. The disciplined individual manages to weather crises because he does not depend exclusively on external validation. And this generates a rare strength nowadays. While many live trying to appear rich, intelligent, or powerful, few have the courage to develop integrity when no one applauds. And curiously, it is these few who end up building true influence. Not because they feign virtue, but because they carry a consistency that is difficult to find. The appearance of virtue may convince multitudes temporarily, but only substance sustains pressure, money, and power without completely corrupting the man. And there's an even deeper detail to all of this. After someone learns to build character, they inevitably begin to perceive something silent. Every human relationship functions as an invisible system of accumulated trust. Most people believe that trust is an emotion. It isn't. Emotions change too quickly. Trust functions much more like an invisible financial system. Every action generates internal credit or debt. Every promise kept strengthens one's own identity. Every broken promise silently weakens a person's self-perception. And here's a truth that almost no one speaks clearly about. The first person who stops believing in you is yourself. Before the market becomes suspicious, before a woman loses admiration, before friends notice inconsistency, an internal rupture is happening silently. The person says they'll wake up early and doesn't, says they'll work out and gives up, promises to save money and buys emotional impulses disguised as rewards. Little by little, the brain learns that their word isn't worth much, and this creates a devastating effect, because without realizing it, they begin to enter negotiations, projects, and relationships already carrying an energy of doubt. Decisions based on real human nature require understanding this without romanticizing it. A person doesn't only lose power when they fail externally, they lose power when they repeatedly betray their own internal agreements. And then something curious happens. Even when a huge opportunity arises, he no longer fully believes he can sustain it. Machiavelli observed that strong leaders created stability because they conveyed predictability. And this continues to hold true today. A reliable businessman is worth more than an unstable genius. A disciplined doctor is worth more than an emotionally disorganized talent. An ordinary man who honors his word often builds a more solid reputation than extremely intelligent but inconsistent individuals. Because integrity generates emotional weight. Those who speak truthfully don't need to exaggerate their presence all the time. Energy itself communicates firmness, and this appears even in the smallest details. The man who organizes his finances conveys a different kind of security. The person who answers important messages without beating around the bush conveys a different perception. The leader who admits mistakes without making excuses earns instant respect. Calculated use of force doesn't mean emotional brutality. Often it means mastery over childish impulses, and this requires daily practice. A powerful exercise is to start creating micro-agreements with yourself. Small ones. Ridiculously simple. Read 10 pages a day. Walk for 20 minutes. Sleep at a consistent time 3 times a week. It seems like little, but the brain registers this as concrete proof of internal reliability. This is how a strong identity is born, not in heroic moments, but in the silent repetition of small coherences accumulated over time. There's also a dark side to all this that few dare to admit. Insecure men often try to compensate for a lack of integrity with excessive social performance. They speak too loudly, promise too much, show off too much. Because deep down, they know they can't sustain it internally. That's why some millionaires remain desperate for validation. The money came in, but the inner confidence was never built. And without it, any crisis becomes an existential threat. Politics guided by reality, not ideals, shows something brutal. The market rewards predictability. Reliable people drive gigantic businesses, relationships, and opportunities because they transmit emotional stability. Think of someone like Warren Buffett. Much of his strength lies not only in financial analysis, it lies in the behavioral consistency built over decades. The man has become synonymous with reliability, and this creates an invisible capital more powerful than aggressive marketing. Your own loyal armies don't appear by chance. Loyalty is born when people feel they can predict who you are even under pressure. And the more a man understands this, the more he begins to realize that true authority doesn't depend solely on competence. There is something even deeper happening. The way someone communicates reveals exactly the level of alignment between identity, behavior, and inner truth. There's a silent trap destroying millions of modern men, living by reacting to the environment instead of operating on principles. A person wakes up motivated when everything is going well, disciplined when inspired, and focused only when they feel like it. The result? Their life becomes an emotional rollercoaster controlled by external circumstances. And circumstances are treacherous. The market changes, people disappoint, money fluctuates, the body tires, fortune turns without warning. Machiavelli already understood this when he spoke about virtù and fortuna. Fortuna represents the inevitable chaos of life. Virtù represents the inner capacity to remain strategic even in the midst of the storm. The problem is that most try to control fortune while neglecting virtù. They want to control the economy, social approval, opportunities and recognition, but they can't control their own impulse to procrastinate for 30 minutes. Politics guided by reality, not ideals, demands accepting an uncomfortable truth. Emotionally fragile men will always be slaves to circumstances, and this has nothing to do with money or status. There are rich men completely controlled by external emotions and simple men with almost unshakable mental stability. The difference usually lies in the principles that govern their decisions when no one is watching. Principles act like invisible rails. They reduce mental fatigue because they eliminate unnecessary internal negotiations. A disciplined man doesn't wake up wondering if he's going to train. He simply trains. Not because he's constantly motivated, but because he's decided that this behavior is part of who he is. And that changes everything. Imagine two businessmen going through a severe financial crisis. The first one despairs, cuts important relationships, makes impulsive decisions, and starts mistreating employees because his emotions control his choices. The second one feels pressure too, of course, but operates according to predefined principles, maintains clarity, reduces excesses, protects cash flow, preserves reputation, and continues to make rational decisions. External chaos exists for both, but discipline drastically reduces the psychological impact of chaos. Better to be feared than loved might work in certain competitive environments, but men guided only by fear eventually collapse because they lack a stable internal structure. Solid principles, on the other hand, create consistency even under extreme pressure. A practical example of this is creating non-negotiable rules, sleeping without a cell phone an hour beforehand, investing a fixed portion of income every month, training even without motivation. Read books daily that strengthen strategic thinking, such as Marcus Aurelius's Meditations, Napoleon Hill's The Law of Success, or Sun Tzu's The Art of War. Small structures create incredible psychological resilience over the years. A man without principles spends his time putting out emotional fires. A disciplined man, however, slowly begins to build a predictable, solid life that is difficult to destroy. And this generates something extremely rare today, strategic peace, because while many live anxiously trying to control the unpredictable, he understands that his true strength lies in his ability to respond correctly to the unpredictable. Calculated use of force often means precisely that, conserving emotional energy for what truly matters. Avoiding being hated also involves the maturity to not act impulsively in moments of pressure. How many men destroy relationships, businesses, and reputations in 5 minutes of emotional outburst? How many trade long-term building for immediate pleasure? The end justifies the means seems attractive when there is desperation for quick results, but men guided only by urgency often sabotage themselves in the medium term. Because without principles, all pressure becomes a risk of collapse. And curiously, the more someone strengthens their inner discipline, the more their presence changes. People begin to feel firmness even before hearing their words. There is emotional weight in men, aligned with themselves. And that's exactly where an even more powerful detail emerges. Because sooner or later, all this internal structure inevitably begins to appear in the way a person speaks, positions themselves, and influences their surrounding environment. Most men believe that communication is simply about knowing how to speak well. It's not. True communication is about revealing identity. A man can memorize techniques, study persuasion, learn mental triggers, and repeat impactful phrases. But ultimately, people sense the level of internal alignment behind the words. That's why some enter a room and immediately capture attention without raising their voices, while others speak for hours and no one really takes them seriously. Authority doesn't come from volume, it comes from consistency. Machiavelli deeply understood the power of the appearance of virtue, but he also knew that an image without internal structure becomes unstable under pressure. Because when life gets tough, discourse reveals who a man really is. Politics guided by reality, not ideals, requires perceiving something uncomfortable. Many men use words to compensate for weaknesses they cannot face. They talk about discipline without discipline. They preach leadership without self-control. They sell confidence while living dominated by silent insecurity. And the human brain perceives this almost instinctively. Perhaps not rationally on first contact, but emotionally it perceives it. The energy doesn't match. The gaze betrays. The behavior contradicts. And that's where communication loses its power even before the sentence is finished. Truly influential men speak differently because they live differently. They don't need to prove their worth all the time. They don't interrupt conversations trying to intellectually win every argument. There's a strategic calm in those who have built inner security. A simple example of this appears in negotiations. The insecure man usually talks too much. He tries to excessively justify his ideas. He nervously fills silences. The aligned man, on the other hand, sustains pauses without discomfort. He understands that presence also communicates. Calculated use of force often means knowing when not to speak. And this creates an enormous psychological impact. Think of figures like Steve Jobs during presentations. The weight didn't just come from the words. It came from the silent conviction behind them. The man deeply believed in what he was building. And real conviction permeates body language, tone of voice, rhythm, and even silence. Loyal and dedicated armies don't just follow beautiful speeches. They follow men who demonstrate consistency between words and actions. A powerful exercise to develop this is to start observing small, daily inconsistencies. The person says they value health, but destroys their own body. Says they want wealth, but spends it emotionally. He claims to seek peace, but fuels pointless conflicts online. The greater the misalignment between discourse and behavior, the less emotional power communication loses. And this affects everything: leadership, attraction, sales, relationships, and social influence. There's also a brutal detail that few realize. Men without a solid identity end up copying the language of other strong men. They repeat ready-made phrases, rehearsed postures, and popular opinions, trying to absorb authority through imitation. But powerful communication doesn't come from performance. It comes from inner clarity. A man who knows exactly who he is doesn't need to constantly build a persona. Better to be feared than loved might work strategically in certain environments, but even fear loses its effect when there's no substance behind the posture. And substance requires alignment. The end justifies the means might produce quick gains in influence, but empty manipulation inevitably exacts an emotional price. Because sooner or later, a man begins to feel the weight of maintaining personas that don't represent his true essence. Constant adaptability doesn't mean changing identity according to social convenience. It means maintaining principles while adjusting strategy to the environment. And curiously, when someone masters this, their communication begins to generate something rare: instant trust. People start to feel confident without being able to explain exactly why. Because aligned men carry a kind of perceptible emotional stability. And then, an even deeper level of this construction emerges. After all, the way a man silently speaks to himself shapes everything he believes he is capable of building in the external world. Few men realize it, but a conversation is happening inside their minds all the time, and this conversation is silently shaping the destiny they build. The problem is that most use their own internal language as a tool of destruction without even realizing it. Phrases like, "I never succeed," "I'm disorganized," "money doesn't stay with me," "I wasn't born for this" seem innocent, but they function as psychological commands repeated daily. The brain listens to everything, and then it begins to act in a way that is consistent with this verbal identity. Machiavelli understood that perception shapes collective behavior, but there is an even more dangerous dimension. The perception a man has of himself shapes his own decisions. Politics guided by reality, not by ideals, requires accepting that identity is not just something emotional or philosophical. Identity is practical programming. The individual who internally repeats that he is weak begins to avoid challenges. The man who defines himself as disciplined creates behaviors compatible with this narrative, and this happens even without consciously realizing it. That's why many men remain trapped in the same cycle for years. They try to change habits without altering the identity that sustains those habits. It's like trying to build a different building using the same cracked foundation. Sooner or later, everything collapses again. Strong men learn to use language as a tool for inner building, not cheap illusion or childish positivism, but strategic psychological alignment. There's a huge difference between lying to yourself and consciously choosing the identity you want to strengthen. When a man starts saying, "I'm the kind of man who finishes what he starts," something silently changes within him. The brain begins to seek coherence between identity and action, and that's where small transformations begin to gain cumulative strength. Calculated use of strength also applies to how someone uses words within their own mind, because words carry emotional direction. A simple example of this appears in men who start training regularly. The guy who thinks, "I'm trying to get in shape," often gives up quickly. But the man who thinks, "I'm disciplined with my body," creates a much stronger identity association. It seems like a small detail, but it completely changes behavior over time. A powerful exercise is to replace weak language with constructive and specific language. Instead of "I need to stop spending," use "I'm a man who protects capital." Instead of "I have to study," use "I am someone who develops intellectual value." Books like Psycho-Cybernetics by Maxwell Maltz or Atomic Habits by James Clear clearly show how identity influences behavior much more than momentary motivation. And the more a person understands this, the more they realize that their inner words are literally shaping their external reality. There is also an extremely powerful dark side to all of this. The environment constantly tries to impose limiting identities. Family, school, friends, the internet, culture, all project expectations about who a person should be, and many spend decades living out characters constructed by others. The appearance of virtue becomes a mechanism for social survival. The individual learns to appear acceptable instead of developing their own essence, but this exacts a brutal psychological price, because the person begins to feel empty even when achieving external goals. Deep down, they know they are living far from their own truth. Better to be feared than loved completely loses its meaning when someone no longer even knows who they really are without external approval. Personal and loyal armies begin first within one's own mind. A man divided internally will never sustain solid leadership externally. Constant adaptability doesn't mean abandoning identity to please different environments. It means strengthening one's essence so much that no environment can completely distort its direction. And when that happens, something curious begins to emerge. The person begins to understand that building wealth, influence, and legacy also depends on how they treat other people along the way. Because sooner or later, all true growth inevitably stumbles upon a strategic truth that many ignore. No one builds something great alone for very long. There's a very popular lie in the world of business, power, and male ambition. The idea that constant brutality is synonymous with strategic intelligence. Many men fall into this trap because they confuse coldness with strength. They think that manipulating, exploiting, and crushing people is a sign of superiority. In the short term, this might even yield results. Machiavelli knew that the calculated use of force has its place in certain contexts. But what few people understand is that even Machiavelli understood the importance of avoiding being hated, because hated men build unstable empires. Sooner or later, the emotional toll comes due. Politics, guided by reality, not ideals, shows something extremely pragmatic. Loyalty is worth more than sustainable fear in the long run. Loyal employees protect businesses in crises. Loyal customers continue to buy when competitors appear. Loyal partners create invisible opportunities. Solid relationships multiply growth exponentially, and this doesn't happen because of cheap sentimentality. It happens because human beings function in a network of emotional trust. The man who understands this begins to realize that treating people well is not a moral weakness. It's strategic intelligence. The problem is that many only discover this too late, after accumulating money while destroying reputation, relationships, and emotional stability. One of the best modern examples of this is Costco. While many companies sought maximum profit by cutting wages and pushing employees to the limit, Costco took a different path. It paid better, created a more stable environment, and invested in employee retention. The result? More loyal employees, lower turnover, higher productivity, and sustainable growth for decades. This completely dismantles the simplistic view that exploitation always generates a competitive advantage. The end justifies the means seems brilliant to men desperate for quick enrichment, but intelligent men understand that destructive means often sabotage unseen future results. Think of a businessman who constantly humiliates employees. He might achieve temporary efficiency through fear, but little by little, he loses team creativity, internal trust, and silent respect. Now imagine the opposite. A firm, strategic, demanding leader who treats people with dignity. His own loyal armies are born precisely there. Men follow strong leaders, but they remain by the side of those who demonstrate human consistency under pressure. And this applies even in personal circles. The person who discreetly helps friends through difficult times often builds far more valuable support networks than those obsessed only with taking advantage of everything. A powerful exercise is to begin observing relationships through the lens of accumulated value. Those you strengthen today can open enormous doors tomorrow. Those you emotionally destroy today can become a silent problem in the future. Nothing disappears completely in human relationships. There's also a profound detail that few realize. Truly strong men don't need to use cruelty to prove their power. Insecurity is often far more aggressive than true authority. Emotionally fragile men humiliate, manipulate, and control because they depend on it to sustain their ego. Aligned men, on the other hand, possess strategic calm. Being feared rather than loved might work in specific life battles, but genuine respect is born when strength and humanity coexist. And this generates an absurdly more solid influence. Constant adaptability means understanding when to be tough, when to negotiate, and when to show compassion without appearing weak. Because intelligent compassion is not emotional submission, it's long-term vision. Warren Buffett often says that reputation takes decades to build and minutes to destroy. And a large part of that reputation stems precisely from how someone treats people when they have the power to act differently. Virtù and fortuna go hand in this as well. Fortuna can put wealth in any man's hands, but only character sustains wealth without turning a man into someone empty and isolated. And the more one understands this invisible game of human relationships, the more one begins to perceive an inevitable truth. In the end, the market, life, and people don't just reward effort or intention. There is something even more decisive determining who grows and who remains stuck in the same place. There's a silent reason why many men work absurdly hard for years and yet remain stagnant. And no, the problem is almost never just a lack of effort. The world is full of tired, busy, and unproductively busy men. The real dividing line is rarely the amount of energy invested. It's alignment. The market doesn't reward intention, it doesn't reward suffering, it doesn't reward hidden potential. The market rewards coherence between identity, behavior, competence, and external perception, and that completely changes the way we see success. Machiavelli deeply understood that power is born from the ability to align image, strategy, and execution without generating fatal contradictions. Politics guided by reality, not ideals, requires accepting something uncomfortable. Misaligned men transmit noise. The individual says he wants prosperity, but lives financially disorganized. He talks about leadership, but can't lead himself. He wants respect, but tolerates environments that erode his dignity daily. He desires freedom, but builds habits that deepen emotional and financial dependence. And the most dangerous thing about all this is that misalignment generates invisible wear and tear. The man feels constant fatigue because he is fighting against himself all the time. How can someone build solid wealth while silently sabotaging their own identity every day? Truly dangerous men learn early on that alignment generates exponential power. When identity, habits, and direction walk hand in hand, everything begins to gain cumulative strength. Think of someone who decides to become a reference in a specific skill. If he only wants this occasionally, the results will be fragile. But when he starts organizing his routine, environment, friendships, content consumption, and behavior around this identity, growth accelerates absurdly. Calculated use of strength also means eliminating wasted energy on internal contradictions. A clear example of this appears in men who desire financial freedom while maintaining a lifestyle created to impress people. They buy status before building wealth. They seek validation before stability. And then they don't understand why they live emotionally trapped in their own consumption pattern. The end justifies the means seems seductive when there is anxiety for quick results, but misaligned men often sacrifice peace, reputation, and identity, trying to maintain an image incompatible with their internal reality. Aligned men operate differently. They build silently. They invest before showing off. They learn before teaching. They develop value before demanding recognition. Books like The Richest Man in Babylon or The Psychology of Finance by Morgan Housel make it clear that external stability almost always stems from prolonged internal consistency. And this consistency inevitably begins to be perceived by those around us. There's something almost magnetic about aligned men. They convey clarity. They don't need to overconvince because their actions constantly reinforce their words. Better to be feared than loved might work in quick power games, but alignment generates something much rarer: sustainable trust. Your own loyal armies don't just follow strong men. They follow men who are predictable in their values and consistent under pressure. Constant adaptability doesn't mean abandoning essence to survive the environment. It means adjusting strategy without losing internal direction. And here's the most profound detail of all. When a man finally aligns who he says he is, what he does daily, and how he treats people, his presence changes completely. His gaze changes. His communication gains weight. Opportunities begin to appear more frequently because the environment perceives emotional stability and practical consistency. Virtù and fortuna finally begin to work together. And it is precisely at this point that many understand something that completely transforms the way they see wealth, influence, and power. Ordinary men don't become extraordinary just by learning techniques. They become extraordinary when they eliminate the contradictions that were silently sabotaging their own life's construction. Now you understand why so many men spend their entire lives chasing money without ever truly gaining power over their own reality. Because true wealth never began in the bank account. It always began in the inner structure. An emotionally disorganized man may even make money, but he will hardly be able to sustain peace, influence, and respect at the same time. And perhaps this is the most brutal difference between ordinary men and men who leave a legacy. While most try to change their lives only externally, few have the courage to rebuild identity, discipline, communication, and character from the root. Machiavelli understood that the world respects men capable of seeing reality as it is, not as they would like it to be. And this requires a rare maturity nowadays, because growing hurts. Evolving requires abandoning old versions of oneself. It requires stopping negotiating with weaknesses that seem small but silently destroy entire futures. The question now is simple. Which of these skills have you noticed is most lacking in your life today? Character, discipline, emotional control, alignment, integrity, or perhaps the courage to stop living just trying to please others? Because the truth is, many men already know exactly what they need to do. The problem has never been a lack of information. It's been an excess of distraction, ego, and self-deception. Politics guided by reality, not ideals, demands facing this without excuses. The market isn't waiting for your hidden potential. The world responds to the man you demonstrate yourself to be every day. And perhaps the most uncomfortable question is this. If someone silently observed your routine for the next 30 days, would that person conclude that you are truly building the life you say you want? Or would they perceive contradictions that you are still trying to ignore? So comment below which of these 7 skills resonated with you the most, and especially which one you know you need to develop immediately. I want to hear your thoughts on this. And if this video opened your mind in any way, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications, because from now on, you're going to start seeing power, money, influence, and human behavior in a way that most people will never dare to see. And believe me, the more you understand real human nature, the more impossible it becomes to go back to living on autopilot.